Welcome back to my talk on finding joy in uncertainty. In the first section of my talk, I spoke about finding joy in the uncertainties of our daily meditation practice, our formal meditation practice. Today, I'd like to talk about finding joy in the uncertainty of the certainties, that is, old age, sickness, and death. Before I go there, though, I'd like to spend a little time just talking about this difference perhaps between joy and happiness. So in the suttas, joy, piti, and happiness, sukha, mean different things at different times depending on the context that they're presented in. For the purpose of this talk, I'm really thinking of joy as an energy, a physical energy in the body, and how this energy, this uplifting energy, impacts our actions. So when it comes to finding joy in these certainties of life, I think it actually helps to start every day with these 5 remembrances, the practice of repeating, or in some cases chanting, the 5 remembrances. I am of the nature to grow old. I have not gotten beyond aging. I am of the nature to become ill. I am not beyond illness. I am of the nature to die. I am not beyond death. All that is near and dear to me will vanish. And the 5th, I am born of my karma, or I'm born of my actions. I will inherit my actions. Whatever I do, whether skillful or unskillful, that I will inherit. So these things are certain, of course. But what is not certain is the uncertainty of how they will arrive for each one of us. And so how do we bring joy to this uncertainty? So the uncertainty of growing old. Now, the only thing uncertain about that is how we age. And of course, all of us age differently depending on our environment, depending on our genetics, etc. And aging, all of these are, of course, natural processes. So can we first find joy just in the nature of this body, right? So this body, which we've been endowed with, which we've manifest as, is a miracle in itself. And of course, part of the miracle of that is its natural process. And despite the fact that society does everything possible and presents us with all options, at least Western society, to avoid the inevitable, to avoid aging, it's going to happen. And how it happens with each one of us is the uncertainty we're working with. But if we can find joy in that natural process and just realize, so I've been given this body, I will treat it as well as I can through nourishment, through exercise, through meditation, right? But I still don't know how it's going to age. And, every day I've aged a little bit more, of course. And every breath I'm that much closer to the inevitable end. So can I treat that again as an opportunity for delight? I'm still here. I'm still here, right? And then we can find joy as well in the little things, as we look in the mirror every morning and wonder who that person is that we're looking at. It's changed every day it changes, right? Or those moments where, we're with friends and the friends say, "You look great," Now, my habit, I don't know about yours, is to resist that, to say, "Oh, come on," especially friends I haven't seen in a while. But of course, they've aged too, and they may look great, right? And, it's always surprising, right, to look at those pictures from childhood, and then you see somebody 40 years later and see what's changed, right? So we find joy and delight in that natural changing of the body. And, as we get older and older, depending on our mental health and our physical health, we just don't know what's going to happen. And so we are continually working with this not knowing, this uncertainty. And we can resist that. We can resist that uncertainty. But resisting it is no way to find joy in it. If we accept the uncertainty and are just being with the uncertainty, then every moment is an opportunity. As it was in formal practice, every moment is an opportunity to be surprised. Finding joy in the uncertainties of illness. It's not necessarily certain that we will all get ill, of course. We could just age and fade away. My mother was kind of like that, actually. She lived a very long life and basically just faded away in the last few years of her life, but she never really became ill. She was very fortunate. But of course, many of us are not. And I had a student a number of years ago who, when she took her class with me, was already dealing with a very serious illness. And a few months later, I received a call from someone, her relatives, asking if I would go visit her in the hospital. And of course, I had no idea she was in the hospital. So I went to see her at the time. She was on a respirator, but could talk. And, was happy to see me, and we practiced. I guided her in a loving kindness practice, as I recall. And I kept going month to month because it was very clear that she was not going to be coming out of the hospital anytime soon. And when I asked her once, what would be the best case scenario for her, being that at the time she couldn't eat. She was on a tracheotomy the last few months of her life, really the last year of her life. And it was hard to see that she would ever have a normal life. Yet every time I saw her, there was this gleam in her eye. And I realized that she was, whether she knew it or not, she was really experiencing resonant joy. So she was finding joy in the goodwill of others. She was finding delight in the happiness of others. And so that was one way that she was receiving joy in those moments. I think another way was simply receiving the love and compassion from those around her who were supporting her, the medical workers, the doctors, etc. And while there were times, of course, when there was frustration there were other times when it was clear to me, anyway, when I saw her, that she was receiving this with an open-hearted joy. And sadly, she passed away in the hospital, never leaving intensive care, actually. But there was something in her that just showed this spark of joy that really never disappeared. So this is an extreme case, of course. But I've also been with people in hospitals who have resisted everything, who have resisted what's here and what's true in this moment. And it's so hard and so sad to watch that. So when we are ill, and it may be very minor illness, but can we actually receive the illness in a way that allows us to be with the not knowing of every moment? Like, even last week I was quite sick. And of course, in these days of COVID, where we've been confronted with illness in a very specific way, and there's that moment when you sneeze and you're thinking, oh, I better get tested, right? And to me, at this point, it's kind of almost humorous that we have to think that way, because sneezing isn't even a symptom of COVID. But still, it's just like we're on edge in that way. And we can be on edge from a place of fear, or we can be on edge from a place of curiosity and joy. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll get tested and, make sure I'm okay. And then we have joy in that moment where we realize, as we expected, that it's a negative test. So it's a reaffirmation. So at every moment these days, there is that uncertainty of illness, and there's an opportunity for finding joy in the not knowing of what's next. the uncertainty of death. So, as we don't know, how we're going to die or when we're going to die, if we live with the fact that it could happen at any time, either to us or to our dear friends or family, right? So this takes in both the third and the fourth truth, right? That I'm not beyond death. Well, neither is anybody else. Then, at every moment of that uncertainty, we can be delighted with what we have. We can be delighted with the fact that we're here. We can be delighted with each breath. We can find joy in each breath. Yeah, this is another moment of life. This is another opportunity to be fully present. This is another opportunity to express my love of life, to express my love for others. And again, it's like the denial of that sort of, in a way, puts us to sleep. Right? Denying that there is this possibility that I could die at any moment. My friends could die at any moment. And maybe some of you have had that experience of friends suddenly dying. I know I have. And it's in that moment that you recognize, did I tell that person I loved them the last time I saw them? Right? So when we live each moment as though death were just around the corner, we wake up in each of those moments and we find joy and delight in each of those moments. So that's a way of working with the uncertainty of death and the uncertainty and the knowing, rather, that all that we have will vanish. And this is not only about friends, but also about things that we have, right? How often have you gone through all those things that you have and appreciated them? And, this is an important aspect of life. We collect things throughout our life, but then we sort of forget about them. And maybe it's time to just go back and check and see what it was that brought you joy in the first place from a particular piece of art or a plant or a book, just as a reminder. And then, of course, when it comes to our actions, can we bring a joyful effort into our actions? And also recognize that depending on how we live those first four remembrances, how we bring those into our lives, that actually has an impact on our actions. In other words, if we live from a place of denial of these truths, that's probably going to have a pretty negative impact on our actions. But if we live from a place of full acceptance of these truths, then we have a joyful effort that we bring into our actions, and our actions are likely to be skillful. So again, I really recommend that you take these practices on as a daily practice, these remembrances, and see how it impacts your life. And in fact, see then how it impacts every day of our lives and all those things that we do in every day. And that's going to be the topic of the next part of this talk, is finding joy in the uncertainties of our day-to-day activities. I look forward to seeing you then.